Who'd have thought, says Rhodri Morgan, that Labour would win places like the Vale of Glamorgan and Clwyd West, but lose Llanelli and Rhondda. This conference may have been billed as the start of the process of drawing up party policies for the next Assembly elections. But it's the general election, likely to be held next year, which will be concentrating minds. Mr Morgan says he wants to hold the heartlands and keep the seats they won last time. That means holding on to somewhere like Monmouth. Nick Horton's been there.
Labour is rarely easy, as farmers like John Davies know all too well. He rears sheep and cattle on 160 acres of some of the loveliest countryside in Britain. Until recently, it seemed to be natural Conservative territory. But the birth of new Labour was remarkably painless, even here. 3 years ago, Monmouth was one of the scores of apparently true blue areas to turn to Tony Blair. John Davies says that he would never vote Labour, but many farmers like him did.
The problem is now that the Labour Party have got such a big majority that they can really disregard anybody within the country who really has a grudge against as a problem. And I don't think it's healthy, really, that the government has such a big majority.
He suspects that Monmouth will return to traditional loyalties by the next general election.
I think that there was a big protest vote, perhaps, within Monmouth, and that will probably go back to Conservatives when the next election comes around.
Monmouth is an interesting area. It's probably the closest that Wales has to a Middle England seat. It's also a mixture of the largely rural and urban, which makes it a telling barometer of how Labour is performing both in Wales and at a UK level. One of the urban valley areas is Penyclawdd, home to Marlene Thomas, a former chair of the Wales Labour Party. She says Labour members are anxious for change.
Things aren't happening quite as fast as they would want. I think they needed pointed out to them constantly that certain promises were made to the electorate about tax, and that those promises certainly need to be kept. I think a lot of my people feel that the second term of the Labour government will be the real radical one.
It was no surprise that William Hague chose Monmouth to launch the Welsh leg of his Save the Pound campaign. The seat fell briefly to Labour in the 60s and again in the 90s, before reverting to Tory type. Labour's Hugh Edwards won the seat back in 1997, but David Davies became the Tories' only first-past-the-post Assembly member here.
I must work hard to try to gain as much support as I can